the United States and Israel are losing their dominant edge. A Russia-Turkey axis is tightening its grip, and the balance of power in the Middle East is shifting. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Global Perspective. The Middle East is no longer the familiar chessboard where the United States and Israel can move at will. The balance is shifting, faster than even Washington expected. Meanwhile, a new cluster of powers is quietly tightening its hold, slowly but coldly turning old strategies into obsolete relics. Strong statements still echo across the political stage. But on the ground, a very different story is unfolding. Precision strikes, silent alliances, and long-term strategies are gradually locking the entire region into a new reality. Israel is beginning to feel pressure from multiple directions, while the White House appears stretched thin, forced to divide its attention across too many fronts at once. A transformation is underway, not loud, not explosive, but powerful enough to shake a decades-old order to its core. And what comes next may surprise everyone. Stay with us. Subscribe, like, and share to stay updated. The U.S. steps back. Turkey rises. Israel loses its throne. April 2026. While the Pentagon stretches its forces across the Pacific to contain Iran and pivot toward Asia to counter China, a silent reversal unfolds in the heart of the Middle East. The shock. It happens while Washington still believes it is in control. A new global military ranking reveals a harsh truth. Israel, once considered nearly invincible, is no longer dominant. Years of attrition in Gaza and along its northern border have begun to wear down its war machine. And stepping into that vacuum is Turkey. Under the leadership of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Ankara has transformed itself from a dependent ally into an independent power center. In just 2 decades, weapon import dependency dropped from 80% to under 20%. Defense spending surged beyond $50 billion. A full-scale war machine emerged, not just a defensive force. On the ground, thousands of tanks, from Leopard models to domestic projects. In the air, low-cost but highly effective UAVs like the Bayraktar TB2, already reshaping warfare from Syria to Ukraine. Turkey does not compete by burning money. It attacks asymmetrically, turning expensive enemy systems into vulnerable targets. The slap that shocked Washington. When the U.S. removed Turkey from the F-35 program, Ankara didn't retreat. Instead, it accelerated development of its own stealth fighter, Khan, integrating AI to coordinate entire combat networks. A new war brain was born, independent of Western technology. And while the U.S. prides itself on super carriers, Turkey introduced the TCG Anadolu, the world's first UAV carrier. A floating hive of warfare, projecting power across the Mediterranean and beyond. While Washington pivots, Ankara has already stepped onto the center of the board. This is just the opening move. Erdogan challenges NATO, and Washington loses control. Turkey is no longer a loyal member. It is a calculated rebel. Erdogan's ambition is clear, not to follow orders, but to define the game itself. He chose his moment perfectly. The U.S. stretched across multiple theaters. Israel bogged down in prolonged conflict. A massive power vacuum emerging. And Erdogan moved in, but not recklessly. In Afghanistan, while US, UK, and Canadian forces were trapped in a 2-decade war, Turkey played a precise game. Controlled key infrastructure, maintained influence, avoided heavy casualties. A cold, pragmatic strategy, uncomfortable for allies, but impossible to ignore. Putin's silent move. Behind Turkey's rise stands a deeper calculation. Vladimir Putin does not see Turkey as a threat. He sees an opportunity. Instead of direct confrontation, Moscow chose a subtle path. When Washington sanctioned Ankara, Russia stepped in, with the S-400 system. Not just a weapons deal. A political bomb inside NATO. Then came energy. As Europe tried to cut off Russian gas, Moscow turned Turkey into a transit hub, forcing the West to see Ankara not just as an ally, but as an indispensable intermediary. And nuclear energy. The Akuyu project binds Turkey and Russia for decades. Energy ties become political ties. And political ties reshape alliances. Azerbaijan, Turkey's war laboratory. Turkey doesn't rise alone. Azerbaijan becomes its testing ground. In Nagorno-Karabakh, Turkish doctrine was proven. Fast, data-driven, low-cost, highly destructive. Drone swarms combined with electronic warfare crushed traditional defenses. This is not old warfare. This is the future. And Ankara is exporting it. Israel under pressure. For decades, Israel stood as an unbreakable fortress. Now, cracks are forming. Not from a single blow, but from constant attrition. Gaza conflict draining resources. Northern border tensions. Multi-front threat emerging. The biggest shift. A defensive mindset replacing offensive dominance. And in geopolitics, that change is fatal. The United States, stretched to the limit. Asia, Middle East, Europe, 3 fronts, 1 system. Even as superpower slows down under that weight, decisions become cautious. Response is delayed. Deterrence weakens. And in geopolitics, speed is power. When speed drops, so does dominance. A silent collapse, and a new order. The most dangerous shifts are not explosive. They are gradual. By the time the world notices, everything has already changed. The Middle East is entering a new era. Power is no longer centralized. Alliances are fluid. Control is fragmented. Turkey expands. Russia consolidates. The US adapts. And Israel faces its greatest strategic test in decades. A new global reality. This is not the end. It is the beginning. A multipolar world is emerging, where nations act independently. Power is decentralized. Survival depends on adaptation. The old rules are fading. New ones are being written, through action, not words.